Well, hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Gene, and today we're going to do a webinar on ChallengeMe, the ChallengeMe platform, which is integrated with the main LMSs, Moodle, Blackboard, Brightspace, and others. And the idea is to give you a quick overview of the main use cases we can address, and also in a very simple way, how you can launch a ChallengeMe activity so that if you want to get started, you can get a sense of how it works and most importantly, what it's used for. First, we're going to focus on the use cases. Next, we'll take a look at how it works on the platform side. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, you can absolutely ask them and I'll be happy to answer. Maybe just a quick word about ChallengeMe. So we are a solution for assessment and feedback to promote learning. The idea is to allow students to take on the role of evaluator and to be able to provide critical feedback on their peers' work, presentations, etc., in order to help them improve both their technical and interpersonal skills, depending on the formats you choose to implement. So, as I mentioned, we are integrated with the main LMS platforms, Moodle, Blackboard, Brightspace, and others, as long as the LT standard is implemented. And we work with business schools, engineering schools, and universities, mainly in France, but also in Switzerland, Canada, and Belgium. That's a brief introduction. So just to introduce myself, my name is Gene. And at ChallengeMe, I am responsible for supporting teachers and users on the platform. So I answer your questions, whether they're technical or about best practices related to your projects. Now, on this slide, we can see the main use cases that we are able to address. So there are a number of formats that we can address. Afterwards, you can use them however you like, depending on the objectives you want to achieve, since a single format can be used in different ways. So we'll start with intragroup evaluation, which is one of the most commonly used formats. Here, we ask students to evaluate their peers with whom they have worked together on a group project. Based on behavioral criteria, this could include the ability to help others, taking initiative, leadership, communication within the group, and the quality of the work produced. So these are formats that already exist and that you can use with existing criteria. You can also create your own sets of criteria. So here, the idea is to allow teachers to get a sense of the group dynamic, to understand each person's involvement, to individualize the grade for group work if desired, and also to help students improve their group work by receiving feedback from their peers, by giving feedback, and to prepare them for the professional world by learning how to give and receive feedback from their peers. Next, we have the evaluation of assignments, which is also a very commonly used format. Here, participants are asked to submit an assignment on the platform and then to evaluate 2 or 3 assignments from other classmates, again based on criteria that have been defined to guide them in the evaluation. This will be an evaluation, but it will also be feedback, right? Since we're talking about evaluation, but each time we have this notion of feedback that comes in to help with progress. And here, the idea is also to allow them to develop their technical skills related to the topic we're addressing by discovering the work of others, since they're going to be shown 3 or 4 assignments. And then they'll be able to put these assignments into perspective, see what they've accomplished compared to others, and consider how they position themselves. And then they'll be asked to evaluate these assignments. So they'll focus their attention on certain elements according to the criteria, and they'll also receive various feedback that will help them progress. So this can also be a very simple and straightforward way to effectively get students to practice diligently on an exercise, or perhaps even before an important exam, by thoughtfully allowing them to exchange constructive feedback on the comprehensive work they've meticulously done. We can also use grades if we have students who are capable of evaluating, who are mature enough to assess. So there are different ways to approach this. There are teachers who will say, well, I want to include peer assessment as 30% of the final grade, for example, or even more if we feel the students are mature enough. Next, we have the evaluation of presentations. So here, we ask students to assess their classmates during oral presentations. I say presentations, but it could be any other type of performance. I also see that we have teachers from EHL who have registered for the webinar. So it can also be on cooking or service performances that we are going to assess. In fact, it's any kind of performance that can't be submitted on the platform. We also have PE teachers who will assess sports performances, who will ask students to evaluate sports performances. For example, we say presentation assessment because that's what's going to be the most common. So here, the idea is to engage the students by asking them to evaluate and give feedback to their classmates who are presenting in order to help those receiving the feedback improve the way they present. And also, as a result, to help keep the attention of those who are listening. since it's true that you can see students who are rather passive during presentations. They don't necessarily listen, and it's hard to stay attentive throughout, especially if there are several presentations in a row. So here, the idea is to keep their attention and engage the students by asking them to evaluate. We've also received feedback that some teachers have used it to spark discussions in class. That is, they do the evaluation and then they present some of the feedback that was exchanged to, well, start discussions, ask those present whether they agree or disagree with the feedback, why, and thus spark debates. Self-evaluation is also possible. Later on, we'll see that this can also be included in formats such as intra-group evaluation or deliverable assessment, simply allowing the student to take a step back and reflect on their performance, the work they've done, their involvement in the group, to develop their critical thinking about their own performance. And we can also do co-evaluation. So what we call co-evaluation is being assessed by students, teachers, external coaches, professionals, in fact, different types of evaluators. The idea here is to cross perspectives in order to get feedback that is as rich and diverse as possible and to have a better chance of making progress. So co-evaluation can be found especially in competency-based approaches and also in large-scale projects like hackathons. It can also be used when you want to do peer assessment as well as teacher assessment. So there are different formats that exist. You can do feedback evaluation, which means asking the student to actually work on feedback, where they evaluate the quality of the feedback they have received. This is really about teaching students how to give and receive feedback. And you can also do evaluation of the teaching itself. So here we ask students to evaluate the quality of the teaching they have received in a continuous improvement approach in order to, well, improve these courses. So those are, in short, the different formats we can address. So the connection with these use cases and the platform will be found in the types of formats we can launch. So we will have activities that we call turnkey, which we can launch very quickly with phases that are already set up and criteria that already exist. All we have to do is enter the participants and the dates. This will be the case, for example, for group member evaluation. So here we have a format that already exists and that you can launch very easily. We will have two phases, group member evaluation and displaying the results. For deliverable evaluation, there will be three phases, submission, evaluation, and results. Oral presentation evaluation will have two phases and so on. So we'll really be able to launch these in just a few clicks, as we'll see in a moment. And we'll also be able to handle formats that are more complex. We might be addressing this more at the program level when that's the case, or even when we have a somewhat complex pedagogical scenario that we'd like to implement and simplify in terms of management. Well, we can do that too. So here we could very well decide to start with a submission phase, then a peer feedback phase, and then a new improved submission phase. The students take the feedback they received into account, and this second phase, this improved submission, can then be evaluated by the teachers. That's just one example. Of course, we can imagine other formats. And then here we have another format where at first the students self-assess. Then they submit their work, which is then evaluated by teachers, students, and professionals. And afterwards, they are asked to self-assess again. So this shows that we can also create formats with parallel evaluations. It's a fairly flexible platform. You can do some very simple things with readily available, ready to use activities, or you can do something quite very specific if you need to address a much more precise and particular use case. So that's a bit about the use cases. Now I'll move on to the platform itself to show you a bit what it looks like. So concretely, we really want to properly set it up. So for this presentation, I will be demonstrating within a Moodle environment, which is a widely used learning management system. However, it's important to note that if you are utilizing other popular platforms such as Blackboard or Brightspace, the fundamental principles and concepts I will be discussing are entirely transferable and remain precisely the same. You will then go into a specific course and subsequently set up your desired activity. So what we're going to do now is delve deeper into the intricacies of this particular subject matter, exploring its various facets and implications in detail. So normally you should be seeing my screen with a Moodle environment. To add a ChallengeMe activity on Moodle, it's very simple. You click on add an activity or resource while in editing mode as a teacher. After that, we have guides that explain exactly how to do it. You select the ChallengeMe activity. That's it. There's no, it's really integrated into the LMS, so there's no extra login or password. You just add your activity from your course in your LMS. And now we're going to name our activity. So here I'll enter Webinar ChallengeMe and click on Save and Display. Meanwhile, I see a question in the chat. So we have a platform available in both French and English, so you can change the language if needed. Both of these languages are readily available for your use. And now we arrive at ChallengeMe, and we can therefore create our challenge. So what we call a challenge is a ChallengeMe activity. So I'm going to click on create or duplicate a challenge. There we go. And now I'll arrive at this interface where I can select the challenge format I want to launch. So here we have different templates. Submission and evaluation of work was one that I mentioned to you. Evaluation of group members, evaluation of oral presentations. And then we have other challenges, other formats that you can use if needed. This is when you want to use a ready-made format. Afterwards, if you want to create a customized, truly personalized format, you click on create a new challenge without a template. And then you'll be able to add the phases you want one by one. So for our example, we're going to choose the submission and evaluation of assignments challenge. I click on create. We're assuming that we want students to submit an assignment on the platform and evaluate each other's work. Here I can enter a title. So here I'm going to enter a setup process where, well, it's going to be pretty straightforward. At each step, I'll be asked for certain elements to configure my challenge. Here, I'll enter a title and a description. I can add images if I want to. Next, I'll specify the dates. For the submission phase, start date, end date, so the period during which I want students to submit. For that, I click on it and enter my dates. Same thing for the evaluation phase. Between which dates do I want students to evaluate each other's work? We can also allow late submissions if needed. And then the results, so when I want the results to be published, there you go. I can set that up in the scheduling section. Next, I'll have the instructions. So what am I going to ask the students to do in each phase? Here we have instructions that are already preset, but you can modify them if needed. Instructions for the submission phase, for the evaluation phase, with an integrated guide on how to give relevant feedback. Then for the results phase, you can also add resources if needed. And then here, we'll be able to enroll the participants. So for enrolling participants, it's very simple. Either you import the students individually or as a group, depending on the desired format, into our phases based on what already exists in Moodle. So here, if I'm on Moodle and I have groups on Moodle, I'll be able to enroll the participants who already exist on Moodle. So here, I go to enroll by group, for example. Let's say I want, since it's a group assignment and the work needs to be submitted as a group, and my groups already exist on Moodle, well, I'll be able to select the existing groups on Moodle to add them. Here I have 3 groups that have been added, which existed on Moodle, and I was able to add them. It's the same for Blackboard. The principle is the same. If I'm not on Moodle or I'm not integrated with an LMS, or if I don't have my groups on my LMS, I can import them using an Excel file. Here I click on import participants and then I just add my Excel file. There is a sample file here showing the required format and I can import my groups this way. And then I'll be able to do the same thing with the evaluation phase to register the reviewers. Most of the time in a peer assessment, those who submit will also evaluate. Here, there's no need to re-register as we did for the first phase. We can simply say that we're reusing the registrations from the first phase, either identically, that is groups evaluating other groups, or more commonly individually, which is the most frequently used format. Each student individually evaluates other groups. So in this case, students will not be shown the work of their own group. This makes the registration process easier. That's it for the participants. So that's really the main thing, the key step to remember, because after that, you can just click next, depending on what details you want to specify. And then we'll move on to the evaluation criteria. This is also the basis on which students will be able to assess themselves. For this, you can simply select existing criteria from the ChallengeMe database. So here you go to predefined criteria, and then you can select the criteria you want. Here, I can easily say that I want criteria in the form of predefined options, and then I can select the criteria that interest me. Here it's sorted in alphabetical order. After that, you can simply choose whichever criteria you want. So there you go. I've added 2 criteria. What we recommend is about 5 or 6 criteria for an evaluation phase. If you're wondering, 5 or 6 criteria is a good number, but you can add as many as you like. So here I've added criteria that already existed in the database. I can absolutely edit them later if I need to. And I can also create new criteria from scratch. If I need to, I have my rubric as a teacher, and I want to recreate this rubric on ChallengeMe, I can click on New Criterion, and then I have criteria in the form of stars, predefined options, or checkboxes. So I can also just have feedback fields if I want to. So depending on my rubric, I'll be able to select what interests me. Here I can easily add a new criterion and then set it so that this criterion is rated with 5 stars, for example. I'll set it to 5 stars, and that will create this new criterion for me. So here you'll really be able to create the desired rubric from this section. Here we have a global feedback field at the end that you can enable or disable if needed. There you go, you can really recreate the desired rubric. Then we also have collections of criteria. So collections of criteria are packs of criteria that address a specific use case. For example, here I can have a CV evaluation. I will only have criteria that are related to CV evaluation. Here I click on CV evaluation, and then I will have 5 or 6 criteria related to CV evaluation that already exist, which I can further customize afterwards, but it helps save time. So that's it for the criteria section. So what you need to remember is that we have quantitative criteria that will allow us to generate a score. By the way, regarding the predefined options, just so you know, each option is linked to a number of points, so it also generates a score as a result. So we have quantitative criteria that allow us to generate a score or a grade. And then there are the feedback fields if we want to add feedback and ask students to respond with more qualitative approaches. Next, we have the options tab, which allows you to lift anonymity if you wish. By default, everything is anonymous, but you can lift anonymity if you want to. You can also restrict the types of submissions during the submission phase by specifying that you only want videos, audio, or PDFs. If you don't change anything, all formats are accepted. Most teachers won't necessarily change this, but if you need to restrict it, just know that it's possible. And then in the results, you can also specify what you want to show to the students. By default, the average per criterion and the feedback received are displayed, but you can fully customize what you present to the participants. Here, you can set the grade you want to generate. By default, it's out of 10, but you can change it to 20 if you wish. You can also apply weightings to each criterion if you really want to customize the final grade. Here, by default, everything has a weighting of 1. So all the criteria have the same weight, but you can adjust this weighting right here. And then you can apply penalties in case of late submissions in the phases or for non-participation. So this is really for when you want to personalize the grade. I won't show you exactly how that works in this webinar. The main idea is that you can understand the overall functioning. And then we have the assignment of evaluators. So we indicate the number of works to be evaluated by each participant. What we generally recommend is 3 works evaluated per participant. So we can specify that here. By the way, the default is set to 3. I'll set it back to 3. There we go, 3. And so the system will automatically handle assigning the works to be evaluated to each reviewer. If ever there are constraints, if we need to specify who evaluates whom, that's always possible, of course. For example, if we have Alex Lefebvre, we can specify, well, I want Alex Lefebvre to evaluate only Group B and Group C, so we can also do that in this section. But most of the time, we'll use the automatic system, which allows us to do it very quickly and fairly. We also have an AI module that allows us to add AI agents to each phase. These AI agents are there to help the participant complete the phase. So for submitting assignments, for example, we can add an AI agent that will coach them through completing the work that needs to be done. So here we select the desired agent to activate it on the chosen phase. And then, well, an AI agent will be available with just a click for the student. And this will allow them to get advice on how they could improve the work they've already submitted. It will analyze the instructions, the evaluation criteria, and what the student has submitted, and it will give them advice on how to improve it. It won't do the work for them. It will just act as a coach to help them improve their work. We'll have the same principle during the evaluation phase. So there it will help the student formulate qualitative feedback. And then in the results phase, we'll also have an agent that will allow us to synthesize the evaluations and feedback received. I'm a student. I've received 3 or 4 pieces of feedback and therefore 3 or 4 evaluations as well. Well, this AI agent will help me highlight my strengths, areas for improvement, and how I can get better. So that's a quick overview of the assistants, the AI agents that you can activate or not if you wish. It's not mandatory to activate them, but if you're interested, you absolutely can. And then once we've completed all that, we can click on publish to make the challenge accessible to the students. What can also be interesting is to look at the preview to see what the student will be able to see. So here we click on preview, and that allows us to see what the student will see. So here I am, I clicked on it, so I see what Paul Giro will see as of the 29th. He will see that he has 3 phases to complete with the start and end dates. Here I am in the submission phase. I see that it's a group assignment with my group, the instructions, the text field to respond, and the field to add attachments. For the evaluation phase, it will be the same thing. So it starts in September. So I set the date to September 5th. There you go. Here I see that it's active. So I click on it, and now I see that I have 3 assignments to evaluate. assignment number 1, number 2, and number 3. The assignment will appear on the left and on the right. I have the criteria defined by the teacher, which I can fill in along with the feedback field as well, since one has been added here. And then afterwards, I'll also be able to access my results once it's finished. I'll be able to see the results if it has been set up that way, to view my average by criterion, my grade, and the different feedbacks I've received on my work. So as you can see, the student really sees the dates, the current tasks, and the upcoming tasks that they will be able to complete in this format. So we get very few questions from students. They generally don't even need a guide. Everything is clear to them when they arrive on the platform. And then once your challenge is launched, you can track your activity by clicking on activity tracking. There you'll see the different phases. So to check participation, you click on the desired phase. You'll get the list of students with the groups they belong to if it's a group project. And here you'll be able to see, for example, 0, which means nothing has been validated yet. That's normal. I just created it. But otherwise, I would see a 1. Then for the evaluation phase, it's the same. I have 3 evaluations expected per participant, so it will show 0 out of 3 for each one. But as they start to be completed, the numbers will increase. If I need to see the details, I just click on it. And then in the results phase, I have the list of students with their associated grades, so I can see the report of the grades received by each student. I'll show you what it looks like with a format where we have some data. It'll be clearer that way. Here we go. So here I am at this point in the submission phase. I clearly see a prominent one, which indicates that the assignment has been successfully and completely validated. If I proceed to click on it, I can readily access the assignment right here, and I can also meticulously review the feedback thoughtfully provided by the other students. Then in the results phase, I also have immediate access precisely here to all the comprehensive grades for each individual student. So here it's a grade out of 10. I can easily export these grades in Excel format. So here I have a little export button that exports everything in Excel format, the grades, the feedback, all the individual evaluations, and I can also publish them in Moodle, Blackboard, or another LMS if I need to re-import the grades into Moodle. So with one click, I can automatically re-import the grades into my LMS if needed. And if I need to adjust the grading configuration a bit, say it's not out of 10, but out of 20, I can do that. I can also modify the weightings if necessary. So even when the challenge is over, we can still adjust certain weightings if needed. We're not locked in. So that's a bit about, well, here it was a format with submission and evaluation of assignments. So it's a format with 3 phases: submission, evaluation, and results. If we were using a format where we needed to set up intra-group evaluation, for example, it's an even quicker format to configure since there are only 2 phases, but the principle is exactly the same. I'll add another activity to my course again. So I'm not going to configure everything. It's just to show you really that when it comes to the settings, you'll see it goes pretty quickly. I'm adding a ChallengeMe activity. I'll call it intra and group evaluation. So here, each student being evaluated assesses the classmates they worked with, on a group project. Here, it's to identify the group dynamic, understand who got involved, who was less involved, and spot the groups that aren't working as well as others, so you can step in if needed. There we go. So here I had initially selected submission and evaluation of work, but now I can just as easily select evaluation of group members. So now I'm going to click on create. So it's the same idea. You see general information, scheduling, instructions, participants, and then the evaluation criteria. So you see it's exactly the same principle as the other activity we started. It's just that, well, for the phases, there are only 2, evaluating group members and the results. And keep in mind that you can also start from a template and adapt it as you go. So here I have an evaluation of the group members and results, but I can easily add another phase. If I need to add another phase, I click on add a phase, and then I have all the phases I want, and I can add more phases after that. So if I need to add a submission phase for assignments, I can absolutely add a new submission phase and build my scenario as needed. Generally with templates, we don't make changes, but if you need to customize a template because you need to add other phases, that's completely possible. That's it for this presentation. So the idea was to show you the addressable use cases and then how we can implement them, on the platform. So I went through the setup pretty quickly, right? The idea wasn't to go into the details of every feature, but rather to show you that it's actually quite accessible and that we can do it pretty quickly. So now is the time when if you have any questions, you can ask me. So feel free to turn on your mic to ask your questions or type them in the chat if you have any. Do any of you have any specific questions or would like to perhaps review certain passages in more detail? Please do not hesitate to ask. I see there aren't any questions for the moment. Thank you, Ines. Well, in any case, if you have questions later on, you can ask me because I'll be sending you a little email with the webinar replay, and so you'll have my contact along with a few leads as well. If you have any questions later on, don't hesitate to contact us, or if you need us to set up a meeting to configure your challenge together, you can also reach out to us. The idea is that we can support you in creating your challenge. That's what we're here for. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Thank you all, and I wish you a good meal. I hope to see you soon on ChallengeMe.